And welcome back to episode number 21 of Raise the Banner podcast. We are sponsored today by hashtag Save the Earth, Vote for Dearth. And we're here with our three co hosts as usual Benny, Ballgame Dearth, and JR. I'm always sick, Mott. JR,
I've
how
had
are you doing?
dude, I've had a rough run the last 2 months. I got COVID, and then I got like a slight respiratory infection, and now I have an ear infection.
At least you're getting it out of the way early.
Yeah, sick free 2024, please.
Yeah, well, not 2024 is already here, and you're already sick.
I
So,
know, fuck off.
all right. Benny Ballgame, how you doing today?
I'm good. This is an out of context joke. Maybe JR can use my tank of oxygen that I have to haul around all the time because you guys think that I'm on my deathbed.
Yeah, for the listeners, Ben did buy his first set of adult diapers today.
He just turned 47 2 days ago. Happy
No,
belated birthday, Ben.
Ben's actually 45, and we just keep saying 47.
Also wrong. And for
He's
and
what,
for those
36?
yes, 37 in April. Which quick segue tangent. The hashtag that started us off would have been my campaign slogan if I had decided to run for president this year, because this is the first year that I'm age eligible.
Hashtag Save the Earth, Vote for Dearth.
2024.
In my delinquent college years when I was a political science undergrad, that was my half in the bag on a Friday night campaign slogan idea with my friends. No, things are good. Excitement for the future. Obviously, we got a new coach that'll don. Maybe it won't be a hoodie. Maybe he'll wear a sweater vest. I don't know. But we got a new coach on the sidelines. I'm sure we'll obviously get into that. So excited for the future. Maybe excited is one of many emotions
Supposed to be
that
your
I've
exit.
that
Your
I've had
exit
over
thoughts,
the last
not your intro thoughts.
couple of days. So we'll see.
All right. Yeah, let's jump into it. Since our last recording last week, probably one of the biggest breaking news, since we started this podcast. Bill Belichick is no longer the head football coach of the New England Patriots. The first time that there will be a different head coach running this football team in over 2 decades. I think it was 24 years, his reign in New England.
January 27th, 2000 was his introductory press conference as head coach of the Patriots.
All right, so we're approaching just about 24 years. It's been obviously I think magical is probably the best way to put it. Magical run. Unfortunately, it has come to an end. What are your overall thoughts on the move? I know we've kind of talked about what we think that they should do, so you can kind of start with that. But Ben, what are your thoughts on this?
So the end of the era is here. I think we all kind of felt like that was what was going to happen. I think we all kind of were in lockstep last week. It was not our preference. We all kind of hoped that Bill and Kraft would figure out a way to make things work. They obviously didn't. They can call it a mutual parting of ways. I think that, we all kind of know in our heart of hearts it was, an amicable firing, if that's even such a thing. Bill had his comments about, whatever collectively is best for the football team, that's what I'll do. And, it didn't really mean much of anything because at the end of the day, he's not here anymore. So, the organization said, this is what we want. And Bill's like, well, I want to honor my contract, obviously speculation. So the Gerard Mayo move, setting aside that they really didn't have an option except to hire him. Like I mentioned, wasn't my first choice, but I can't say that I'm not disappointed. I'm not upset. I would say the process is where it kind of loses me. For those who don't know, there was a clause put in his contract a year ago when he was doing interviews that said he was going to be he was the heir apparent. He was going to succeed Bill. The plan was to do it at the end of his extension, Bill's extension, which apparently expired. His contract expired at the end of the 2024 season. So the plan was he was going to take over for 2025. The bad season obviously accelerated that. We can speculate if that would have meant maybe a promotion for Gerard. Maybe they were going to name him, like officially name him the defensive coordinator, and that way it didn't seem quite like a weird transition. I have no historical context to back this, but my guess is I would assume that not many positional coaches made the jump from positional coach to head coach. I'm sure it's happened. I would imagine it's probably not a common occurrence. The process is kind of what bugged me. It doesn't seem like the smartest business practice to essentially take anybody else who might come along as a candidate and basically say that they're not interested or they don't want them, or just interesting. A year ago, obviously, hard to forecast what may have happened, but say a Mike Tomlin decides, my tenure in Pittsburgh is up, I'm ready for a new challenge. Are you really gonna, at that point, you're hamstrung. You have to give it to Gerard Mayo unless you want to pay out millions of dollars to buy him out of his contract, because now you're breaching his contract if you're trying to bring in Mike Tomlin, right? Obviously, extreme example.
We kind of saw it with Vrabel.
What do you mean?
I think, in a overall scheme, if Gerard Mayo didn't exist, Mike Vrabel would be the head football coach of the Patriots right now.
Oh, I thought you meant Tennessee did that for him. Yeah, I would agree. I would say that if there was no clause in Mayo's contract to be the successor to Bill, that whether or not we would.
I don't want to say the clause, because I think, I don't want to make it seem like Kraft was actually forced and didn't have any choice behind it. I think he even with Vrabel available, he wanted to go with Gerard Mayo.
Well, but that's the thing, is there was a clause in his contract, which is why they were able to just promote Gerard Mayo, because they put a clause in the contract with a succession plan, which it circumvents the NFL's head coaching search requirements. So what you want to call it, I don't know, but there was something in his contract that is, what led to him being the successor to Bill.
You can name a successor. You can name successors in the NFL.
Yeah. So, the process was weird. I wasn't a huge fan of the idea that it had to be Mayo. Again, I think Mayo is going to be I don't have anything to think that Mayo's not going to be a good coach. He's got an interesting background. He worked in finance for 4 years before Bill brought him back to the sidelines. Excited to see what's going to happen next. Again, weird process, but I'm happy with Mayo, and we'll see. We've got 3.5 months until the draft, and we'll see what happens as things unfold moving forward through free agency and then up until the draft.
Fair, Jo. How are you thinking? What are you thinking?
We talked about it a lot, the last 2 to 3 episodes, maybe 4, about if it happens, who's it going to be? And we always land back on the most obvious answer is going to be Gerard Mayo. I'm not, sad that it's Gerard Mayo. I'm actually very happy. At the beginning, I said a million times, I wanted an offensive head coach, but the more I did my research and the more I looked into things, it's understandable that Kraft went this way, because over the years you saw Josh McDaniels, who took the Indianapolis job and then backed out, what was it, the day of his hiring, to go back to New England. Everybody thought, oh, they must have guaranteed that he's going to be the successor to Bill when Bill retires or gets fired or something's to happen. But that never ended up happening. He goes to Vegas, gets fired after, a season and a half, less than a season and a half. Gerard comes back in 2019 as linebackers coach. Things get shaken up. He was able to leave last year if he wanted to. He interviewed for the Carolina job. He was asked to interview for the Carolina job last year, and I think he turned it down, if I'm pretty sure, because I don't know how many people would want to work for David Tepper. But I know he interviewed for Denver. He interviewed for Philly before they hired Sirianni. And didn't Didn't he interview for the Saints job too?
I don't know about
Dennis Allen.
I don't know about New Orleans. He interviewed for Philly after the 2021 season, and then he was going to interview with Carolina before he withdrew. And I vaguely remember there being a report that there was a second team that was interested in making a request to interview him.
It was the Broncos.
And that he basically said that he had his meeting with the Patriots, and that he's like, don't even bother requesting it, because he's like, we won't accept a request to interview Mayo.
So going off of that, I think Kraft didn't know that this was going to happen for sure, but they put it in his contract anyways after last year. Like, hey, once things happen, you're the guy. We've talked about how he's highly analytical, how he's more key to the modern game, how he looks at a modern defense, a modern offense, just all around a modern team in today's NFL in the year 2024 compared to how Bill Belichick ran a team like it was from the 1980s. Like, he was still coaching the New York Giants with Lawrence Taylor when the run game was the most popular option in the offense and not passing. So I love the hire. I wish they maybe would have done things a little bit differently, like just, at least tried to interview outside candidates just to get like their idea on how like other franchises are running, like how coaches are running like an offense, say, or offense or defense, say, like the Lions, like Ben Johnson, or the Buccaneers with Dave Canales, Bobby Slowick, and in Houston. I wish they would have done that just to get an idea and like a view on how other teams are working with the league now, how they're working with the NFL as a whole, with rosters, with players, with like schemes and everything like that. But Kraft was confident enough to say, you're the guy. So I've never doubted Robert Kraft. So let's see how it works out. But I have faith that Gerard Mayo will be the right guy for this job. And I'm happy. I mean, I like the hire, and I know you and I talked about it off the record that one way or another, Gerard Mayo is more than likely the best candidate for the job, no matter what, because he knows the team, he knows the culture. So I'm happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I wrote an article about it, and as I thought about it more and more, I leaned Mike Vrabel, just in part because he did have the experience. But I've been very clear of even before Vrabel was fired, what my preference was. In the end, the priority for the New England Patriots is to hire a good football coach, a good head coach, and I am very confident that will be Gerard Mayo. I think he's a leader. I think that players will want to play for him. I think he can connect with players very well. And as much as the whole, I know like Brady called him Gerard Belichick and all that type of stuff. I think he's going to bring the best of both worlds of, because we've talked to him, we've been very strong that Belichick's not a bad coach. We still believe in Belichick, the coach.
No, he's the greatest coach.
No, what, Ben?
I was saying that, like, we were saying that Bill's not a bad coach, and I said no, as in no, he's not a bad coach. I was agreeing with you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so like
us
big picture,
us old guys must talk different than you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe next time I'll just say no cap, and you'll just pick it up and run with it because you'll know what I'm saying.
God, I don't think I've said no cap in my life. Get out of here. No. Ultimately, we still think Belichick's a good coach, and I think he can bring a lot of what Belichick had, but also bring a new analytical approach, a more refreshing approach to team building, to aggressiveness, and to basically running a team. It's not that we had players that seemingly gave up on Bill Belichick, but I think Gerard Mayo is going to be his own person. He's not going to approach things like Josh McDaniels did or Matt Patricia did. He's very comfortable in who he is as a coach, and I think that's a big difference the biggest difference between Patricia and him and McDaniels and him is McDaniels and Patricia and even Judge tried really hard to be Bill Belichick. Yeah, to be Bill Belichick as a coach. And ultimately that was probably their downfalls. Mayo's not going to bring that. I did hear, I don't know if you listened to, I think it might have been Callahan on Toucher and Rich this morning, possibly. He said, not Rich anymore, so Toucher and Hardy.
Toucher and Hardy, yeah.
Hardy.
Yeah. So he said that Patricia in Detroit had exit interviews like with all his players and stuff, and he did exit interviews with the media, and he brought up like tweets. He had printed out tweets and articles from each media member and would like essentially scold them for writing negatively about the Lions and him at the end of the year.
Yeah, I heard that.
It was just one of the most baffling things that I've ever heard a coach do.
And he's
anyways, I don't think you're not going to see that from Mayo, obviously.
No, and Patricia's a rocket scientist.
I think a rocket scientist could be able to, coordinate a defense that Philly has, but
yeah, that was weird. But
anyways, Gerard Mayo, the head coach, I'm pretty happy with the signing. I think it's a good signing. I'm very interested to see how he, coordinates his staff. We seemingly are going to get a more outside search at OC and DC. I do think ultimately Covington will end up being the guy at the DC spot, and they'll fill within. If the Belichick Sons exit, which I still think that they will. They've been offered the job to stay, but I think they'll end up leaving.
I don't know.
There'll be an entire new positional.
I don't think they will. They have young families, dude. I don't think they're gonna want to uproot their families for 2 years.
I agree. That's why, I think it's possible they stay, but at the moment, I'm still leaning they do.
If they stay,
either way, there's going to be new positional coaches. Sure, if he stays, but even if the Belichick Sons do stay, and we can dump into what would that really mean in the structure and for Mayo, but they would need a new inside linebacker coach because that's Mayo, and they would need a new cornerback coach. I think that cornerback coach
Pellegrino
left.
Or no, yeah, he left for.
The cornerback coach left for Syracuse.
No, yes.
Duke.
Yeah. So I think they need two. If the Belichick Sons leave, that opens up. Yeah. Oh, Duke. That leaves the door open for an entire new staff defensively, because you could theoretically promote Covington, and that leaves it all positional coaches on the defense would be open. So we'll definitely get a new wave of coaches, to say the least, on defense. I think that's why they brought in this guy from Carolina, the linebackers coach. I don't think he's really. I would be surprised if he gets the DC job. Very surprised. I think most likely it will be either Steve Belichick, or.
Well, Gerard Mayo also knows him, so
they'll fill out the rest of the roster.
Yeah,
but I'm curious your guys' thought.
So, JR, go ahead.
Well, no, so I'm not going to try. I know he has a unique name, and I'm not going to try to butcher it, but I know from the articles I read that he and Gerard Mayo actually have a personal relationship.
You're talking about Lukaboo, the kid from Carolina, the guy from Carolina?
Yes.
Okay. Because he's also tight with Steve, so I didn't know if that was.
Yes, but he was the defensive coordinator at Boston College a few years ago, and he was a defensive coordinator right around the time that Gerard Mayo became the linebackers coach in New England. And Boston College players sometimes, work out. I'm pretty sure that Boston College has had practice at like the New England Patriots training facility once, but I know that
I'm sure they've crossed paths plenty of times.
I know, but for a fact that I read that they've crossed, they didn't explain why, but him and Steve both know him. So, I was listening to who was it? I was listening to Callahan this morning, his new podcast that came out last night. I didn't get to watch it, but I watched it this morning before I left for work. He was saying that he thinks the way they're doing that is interviewing them for positions, but going to fill them out throughout the staff. He might be interviewing for DC, but he's actually probably going to be the linebackers coach.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I think it will really be Steve or
DeMarcus
Covington, and they'll fill out the positional staffs depending on if how many spots they need, depending on if this Belichick Suns stay. So defensively, I'm not really worried about them defensively. Like I said, I'm comfortable. If Steve stays, I'm mixed on the whole concept of the Belichick Suns staying, but in terms of the defensive game and prep, they would be in good hands. I wouldn't be worried about it. But even if Steve leaves, obviously Mayo is well versed on running that defense, and Covington he's ready to take a DC role. He interviewed a few spots last year, and he'll, if he doesn't get one here, he'll go somewhere else and get one.
He's been groomed for the job.
Offensively, that's kind of where I think everything kind of opens up. This talks that Bill O'Brien will be in consideration. This talks that McDaniels will be in consideration. This talks that both of them could leave. I forget who it was on. It might have been Felger or Maz earlier that said he thinks that there's a scenario in which both of them go with Belichick somewhere else. I find it I find it pretty unlikely that both will. He said that McDaniels could be essentially an assistant head coach, and Bill O'Brien would be the OC. Again, I find it a little bit pretty unlikely that they both follow Belichick. Ultimately, they'll both be in consideration for OC. I know I released an article a day after I released the head coach article because Kraft beat me to it. There's a variety of other options at OC. What are your guys' thoughts on how you want to approach it? And I guess who's your pick in preference for OC?
So, it's tough, right? So, I guess I'll come at this from two different angles. I don't have any problems with O'Brien remaining as the offensive coordinator if he's allowed to operate under the constraints that a normal offensive coordinator does. Because as we know from articles that have been released, he was to some degree, he was hamstrung by Bill in his ability to kind of form the offensive staff and the offensive scheme that he wanted. Not completely, right? He's the play caller, but the coaches that were in place were not allowed to be let go. So I have no problem with that. He had success here. I mean, he was only offensive coordinator for 1 year in 2011. The offense was pretty good. And he has a history here of being an offensive coach. I would say if they decide that, and by they I mean Mayo, if Mayo decides that he's not a fit for the offensive scheme that the team now wants to move forward with, I would say my preference is somebody like a Zach Robinson, who's the passing game coordinator for the LA Rams. He's kind of really the only guy who jumps out at me. I'm sure there's other options around the league for offensive coordinator. I haven't personally kind of gone down that rabbit hole yet. I've been more along the lines of trying to figure out how they're going to fill out the front office, and obviously they interviewed the guy for defensive coordinator, what the plan is there. I mean, Robinson makes a ton of sense. The Rams have been, pretty prolific offensively for a number of years, especially with Matt Stafford as quarterback. So, I mean, he'd be a preference. I mean, obviously there's other offensive coordinators, that might, be just as qualified, if not more. But I mean, right now I would lean Robinson, but again, I just haven't really dived down that rabbit hole yet.
JR, how about you? Where are you feeling on this?
All right. So at the top of my list, I think because Ben was breaking up when he said his answer, but number one on my list is always going to be Zach Robinson, just because the connection with Sean McVay and the Shanahan family. Because he's from the system and everything like that. He's the passing game coordinator for the Rams, so that's a big part of that offense, of that wide zone read offense, is the passing game. So Zach Robinson would be my number one choice. Clint Kubiak, which is he the run game coordinator or is he the passing game coordinator for San Fran?
Pass game coordinator.
Okay, so
yeah,
I'd say another Shanahan guy, and then I gotta find who it is.
Who?
Hold up. Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator for the Dolphins. If he'd be willing to take a lateral move, just hear me out. I think he'd be a good fit for this team. If they want to move forward with that type of scheme, Frank Smith fits it completely. Or I guess you say Kellen Moore if he doesn't get a head coaching job.
Yeah, there's one other name that I'll throw out there just because I happen to look it up. Shane Waldron, who's the current offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. He's part of the McVay/Shanahan tree. So I just found an article on The Athletic and this is kind of what they talk about. It says he's from the West Coast, but plenty of ties to New England. He studied at Phillips and Andover, played college football at Tufts. And his NFL career as a coach began with the Patriots. He was a quality control coach in 2008, coached the tight ends in 2009, and then he worked under McVay for 5 years, following him to from Washington to LA, and then he became the passing game coordinator in 2020. And he's been the offensive coordinator in Seattle ever since. The reason I bring it up is because there's obviously with Pete Carroll going to the front office, it's possible that he may not have a spot in Seattle much longer. So, just kind of, quick Google search, he might be a guy just to watch out for, especially because he's coached here before and he has that McVay Shanahan mindset.
Well, I'll add another one, Brian Callahan.
I think Brian Callahan and Frank Smith, right? Frank Smith,
the Dolphins coordinator.
Yeah. Getting them to take a lateral move, I think, is very unlikely. I know they don't make they're not the play callers. Both of them are already getting head coaching interviews.
The only one Frank Smith got was Carolina.
Yeah, but if they're getting it would just be pretty bold of them when they're already starting to get those interviews to take a chance and come to New England. Because what if they just suck in New England?
You know who hasn't gotten an interview yet? Eric Bieniemy.
So he's an option. I gave 8 options. Obviously, that included O'Brien, McDaniels, Zach Robinson. They're trying to keep the connection with New England there for obvious reasons. Cliff Kingsbury would be an outside the box guy. I don't know if he's coming. He would come to the Northeast.
I think he's getting a coordinator job out west.
There's been talk that he might take the Raiders job under Antonio Pierce, but I think that's more just speculation than anything because we don't even know who they're gonna give that job to. Bo Hardegree that took over for Josh McDaniels as OC when McDaniels got fired. He was in New England. He followed Josh to Las Vegas. He's probably unlikely. There's Chad O'Shea in Cleveland.
No, thank you.
Most most Patriots fans would know him, obviously, because he was the Patriots coach here. I mean, the wide receiver coach for a decade. He followed Flores to Miami. Now he's in Cleveland. The semi-interesting one that the more I think about it, I kind of like is Nick Caley.
No,
He was the time. Why? Why?
I don't think he's gonna leave McVay. I think McVay is like kind of grooming him to become an actual offensive coordinator for him, and then maybe one day a head coach. I don't think, bro. He left Belichick for Sean McVay. I'm not leaving Sean McVay to come back to New England if I was him.
I mean, if Zach Robinson doesn't get a head coach job and he has the opportunity to take the OC job in New England, I think it would be.
I think we end up hiring Zach Robinson.
You remember, like Belichick's gone, so like.
No, I know that, but I'm saying is like Nick Caley went from New England to Sean McVay as Shanahan tree. Like he has the potential to be a great coordinator if he just does his due diligence and bides his time. Like a year, all he's done. Yeah, he was just a tight ends coach out there.
I know, like, if he stays on track, he'll eventually move up. But like, if the opportunity to move up is now, and he likes the opportunity, it'd be kind of silly for him to just bypass it.
Well, I'd rather Caley over McDaniels.
But anyways, so he's an option. Obviously, he was in New England for a few years, and then he spent the last 2 years in LA or just 1 year? I think it's just 1 year, right?
He left after this year, or after this the Patricia year.
So not that 1 year in McVay's offense is like, knows it in and out to the T, but he went to LA. He learned the Sean McVay offense to as much as he can, and he could come back and have a little bit of McDaniels and probably a little bit of Sean McVay and mix in both.
The only thing overall, with McDaniels is his offense doesn't work in the NFL anymore. The Erhard Perkins system doesn't work. Look how it's been ran without Tom Brady. It doesn't work. No other quarterback can run it as efficiently. Any other quarterback running it, it just doesn't look right, and you don't score points.
Yeah. So the other one option, and I'll see your thoughts on this. It would certainly create a stir in New England. He has, I would say, between being a player and a coach, has spent time with some of the greatest coaches to ever coach in this game, and that is.
Oh boy!
Do you want to guess? Do you want to guess who it is?
No, but I'm afraid.
It is Wes Welker.
100%. I would do it in a heartbeat.
He is the wide receiver coach of Miami. So I just want to pull up his background of it. So I mean, obviously we know the basis of the background of who he is and all that. But just, I was digging deep into who was the coaches when he played and all that. So he played, when he entered the league, he played under Marty Schottenheimer, who is now passed away, but he's a Hall of Fame coach. He then went and played under Nick Saban in Miami. Then he went and played under Bill Belichick, which had Josh McDaniels and Bill O'Brien there. Then he played under John Fox in Denver, Jeff Fisher in St. Louis at the time, the St. Louis Rams. And then after he finished, he then went and coached with Bill O'Brien again for a year. Then he went to Kyle Shanahan for the last few years, and now he's working under Mike McDaniel for the last few years. So it's just like a plethora of future Hall of Fame coaches, not to mention he played with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning.
Tyreek Hill said it best. He deserves a job.
Endless experience. He quite literally has been around some of the greatest football minds of the last 20, 30 years. So I'd be interested in it. I think he's a very intriguing option. I don't love, I guess, semi Robinson. I don't, because he's technically hasn't done it, but I don't love the idea of someone who hasn't called plays yet, and most specifically hasn't run an offense yet, just because we have a new head coach. I would kind of, in a perfect world, like them, if they do go down that route, to find a veteran coach that can kind of help. Maybe that's even Josh McDaniels. I don't know what his plans are, but I could see a world where you hire a young new OC and keep in bring in a veteran offensive coach as kind of like you can give him an assistant head coach title to help
Advisor.
mentor the offense. Yeah. One of those options could be Frank Wright.
I was just gonna say.
I don't know what.
I was just gonna bring up Frank Reich. He's older.
Yeah, I
though.
don't know.
He's
What's in store for
63,
him after being fired twice as head coach. Yeah. So I don't know about that. The other, in-depth options, we could do Mick Lombardi. He was the Raiders OC this past year. He was also obviously from New England. They interviewed McCardle last year for the job, which I think was just, if we're being honest, to fill the minority the Rooney Rule. And then the last name
I thought the Rooney Rule only applied to head coach.
Nope.
No, you have to
Coordinator
do at
and
least
head coach.
You have to do at least one coordinator.
It's coordinator too? Okay.
Yeah. And the final two names that we haven't mentioned, Gerard Johnson, he's a QB coach in Houston. He's still, it might be a little bit of an early jump, but the fact of the matter is, CJ Stroud looks pretty damn good. You don't know how much he played a factor in that. And then Brian Greasy. Yeah, and then Brian Greasy, he's the QB coach in San Francisco. Yeah, so I kind of gave a little bit into him. He's seen as a guy he's going to basically work his way up the tree in the San Francisco eventually, whether it's Kubiak getting a head coaching job or maybe he leaves for New England and then Greasy moves up. But he seems to be a promising name. In the end, I don't know what I prefer. Look, actually, that's a lie. That's a lie. I would love a new scheme, but I want a veteran coach that can also be there to help them. Because the idea of having a new head coach, a new DC, and a new OC all at once kind of scares the hell out of me.
Well, here's what I'll give Belichick credit for. He tried to move in the modern game with the year he made Patricia the offensive coordinator. We just didn't have the right personnel or the right person to coordinate the offense. He tried to go towards a Shanahan-style offense. It just didn't work because A, we didn't have the players that fit that scheme, and B, we didn't have a coach that fit that scheme. Because
we didn't have a coach that knew anything about it.
But it's not Patricia's fault. He's been a defensive coach all his career.
Yeah, I feel bad for the dude. Like, I really do. Like, he got pushed into a job. His reputation hit the goddamn bottom of the barrel basement for, like, something that, like, he just kind of got thrown into. Like, I really honestly feel bad for the guy.
I think Joe Judge deserves more hate than Patricia gets.
Patricia also could have said no. He could have been like, "No, I'm not an offensive coach."
They both. Yeah,
well, he started as an offensive assistant.
My opinion. Well, it's a rabbit hole. I don't really feel like diving down to the current moment. Yeah, never mind. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, is like he started as an offensive assistant. He played offensive line in high school and college, but he turned into a defensive coach because of Belichick. And so he hasn't coached an offense since college.
Yeah, so I'm open to a variety of different options. I don't have like one name or OC that I'm perfectly set on. The idea of the idea of having like a wide receiver coach take the job is also a little bit worrisome. I would really want it. I would really need a good QB coach in the room too. Because I don't know what Wes Welker's experience is coaching quarterbacks. It's can't be very much.
Well, he's not
Not that
coaching
he,
Tua, that's for sure.
yeah, and not that it doesn't mean he can't be a good OC, but the matter of fact is, if you hire Wes Welker, you need a good QB coach, and that would be there's a variety of different paths that could go down that route. But I would like I think a new. I would be perfectly fine if it's O'Brien and McDaniels. Like I'm not gonna be mad about it. I think they're both good offensive coordinators. They both can just be handed the keys to the offense and just said go and take it and be in charge of it and run it. And I think that could be very beneficial to Mayo. But in the end, I think I kind of want a new scheme, and that would
I would prefer,
result in going outside.
I
The
would
only thing
prefer
I'll be wary is
O'Brien.
I don't want them to just and we will never as fans like be able to personally interview these guys and know like the details and stuff like that. But I don't want them to hire someone just because they're a Sean McVay tree or just because they're a Shanahan tree. We've
Well,
talked
now
about this, Ben, for
his brother sucks as a coordinator.
there you go. So like we've talked about this with like drafting dynasty players. Like I always go back to people who drafted Clyde #1 in dynasty football solely because he went to KC. It wasn't really about like his talent. It was just solely because he went to KC. He ended up being the guy, and he actually ended up sucking.
Glad I have
So
Pacheco on my dynasty team.
yeah. So I don't want them to just solely do that, and obviously we'll never know that type of stuff in the in-depth details and in interviews and all that type of stuff. But I don't know. I think I would lean a new regime. It just needs to still make sense. And yeah, I mean, I'm open to a variety of different options, but we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
What would you think about this option?
Uh,
I've been against McDaniels coming back as an offensive coordinator. What about, would you think he would maybe just take a quarterback coaching role, an assistant head coaching role?
No.
He's a damn good
so
quarterback.
that's what I kind of like. I don't. So I think in a general scheme, partly because he would be paid by Las Vegas. If he doesn't go to
Atlanta or
follow
wherever.
Bill wherever he goes, I could see him staying here staying here as like an assistant head coach, like an overall advisor. And I don't know if they would technically give him the QB coach title, but I could see him being like an overall advisor, which that would fall under the realm of like a former guy that's run it that could really help a new guy, a new OC, run the show.
Because
I
Mac
don't know
looked like
how
a
that
competent
dynamic
quarterback
would
with
work.
him, and then he just fell off the rails.
Yeah, like I don't know how that dynamic would work if you brought in let's just say Wes Welker, and he's the OC and McDaniels is a offensive assistant. Like I don't know how that dynamic would work and function. That's a whole nother discussion. But in a basis, yes, I could see it happening. I wouldn't call it likely, but it's certainly possible.
Yeah, I don't think McDaniels would do anything
other
other than
question.
come back as an offensive coordinator.
Well, the problem is if he doesn't follow Bill, and he does,
then he's just out of coach. Then he's just out of coaching. Then he just doesn't take a job.
Well, Patricia came back.
I don't know if he'll sit out the year. I think he would become if there was no other OC jobs and like the best offer was to be like an offensive assistant. I do think he would come back and be that before just sitting out the year. That being said, I think the most likely option is he falls.
He doesn't need to take a coordinator job.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, he's getting paid. But the problem is and Ben actually thinking about it, he has to legally try to get another job. He really can't just sit out the year, or
Yeah,
else
he has to.
the Raiders could fight and not pay him.
They can void his contract,
Legally,
I'm pretty sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
legally he has to the full his full capabilities try to get a new job. Now, does that mean that's why, like, if he was hired in, let's say Belichick goes to Dallas and they need an OC, I don't think that they would give McDaniels like the technical OC title. I think they would be he would be the same jackass and not give him the title like they did with Patricia.
They don't
and
have a
Judge and all that.
coordinator though.
Just for the financial purposes of making the Raiders.
But then again, but you're talking about, that's a Jerry Jones decision, not a Bill Belichick decision.
I don't know. It might be a little bit of both.
But what I'm saying though is Jerry's the GM and his son, is it Steven, is the head of player personnel. Well, it's player personnel, I guess, not necessarily coaching situation. But and I guess this kind of lends to a different question we don't have to dive into about who's making the monetary decisions, right? Whether it was it Bill was it Bill not willing to spend, or are we talking about, Kraft was not actually as, he wasn't giving Bill a blank check like the assumption is, like Kraft said he would. So if Bill goes to Dallas and Josh McDaniels Bill goes anywhere and Josh follows him, it doesn't necessarily mean that just because they didn't name coordinators here for the sake of saving money that he would do the same thing there. Because, yeah, it's Bill's decision, but it also, like, the money comes from ownership, right? So if Jerry Jones is like, I don't care about the money, and Josh McDaniels is like, I want the title of offensive coordinator, and Jerry Jones is like, well, just pay the guy, just name him the offensive coordinator. That's what they'll do. It's not like Bill's not the one saving money by not naming an offensive coordinator. It's the owners that's saving money.
Yeah, but I think, every team plays those games. I think that they would still play and not pay him or pay. I don't know what the exact rules are, but anyways, not to kind of get off track. I do think McDaniels would consider coming back in that role. Like I said, I think it would just be a little bit dicey of how the whole dynamic would work. But let's move on with one more Patriots topic for this week. Obviously, we've heard that they're not going to be adding an official GM. It's going to be Matt Groh and Elliot Wolf leading the charge. I know I mentioned online today, and I think, Ben, you commented on it. They fired Bill Belichick, and they're essentially, in a grand scheme of things, kind of telling the public it was mostly Belichick. They're putting kind of a lot of the blame on Belichick.
They're putting all the blame on Bill. So
Belichick has made remarks that they're not big cash spenders, over the years. The fact of the matter is Kraft's reputation is kind of on the line right now. He fired the greatest coach ever. He basically saying that it's at least in large part his fault that they have, fallen off the wagon the last 5 years. He needs the Patriots to win now, or else, similar to what happened with Brady, if Belichick goes elsewhere and the owner gives him, let's say, more money to spend cash-wise, and he goes out and wins a championship or is just a perennial contender for the next 2 or 3 years at the least, and the Patriots suck, it's going to look kind of like Brady. So Kraft has a kind of not I don't know what the best way to put it is. He has to either show up or shut up. And he needs this to work out for his legacy a little bit. And not that, if it didn't, his legacy would be that much different. But to kind of put a stamp on his legacy, if he can transition this team into the next era after Belichick before, he's getting older, obviously.
before the Jonathan Kraft takes over for good, that would be a huge improvement on his legacy. So he has a very strong desire, obviously, to win. He's going to have to show up. What is your expectations, knowing the fact of all these things? What's your general expectations of how they'll approach this offseason?
So I'll kind of come at this from two different angles. I think the process that they're following, where they're not naming a GM and they're basically handing the reins to Groh and Wolf, gets a big 2 thumbs down from me. I think that's a mistake. I think to say that it's all on Bill for the last 4 years is wrong. I get that he had the final say the vast majority of the time. It came out earlier today. I want to say Breer said this, that essentially, and he referenced the whole collaborative approach versus, Bill's end of season press conference saying, he had help, he had the final say, but he had help, collaborative, yada, yada, yada. He said that that Bill was content not taking Mac at 15 2 years ago, or 3 years ago at this point, and that he was perfectly fine waiting for Davis Mills and doing something else at 15, whether it was stay put or trade back. And that basically he yielded because the entire room was like, hey, like, we need a quarterback. We got to figure out who the next guy is. And that, that he agreed with the decision, but that if it was ultimately up to him, he would not have taken Mac Jones at 15. So where am I going with this? I don't love the collaborative approach. I was talking with a buddy of mine on the phone earlier today, and I likened kind of what I would love to see happen is essentially somebody like a project manager who delegates tasks, but ultimately has power over the vision. And the reason I say that is you have to rely on your scouts, you have to rely on your player personnel people, but at the end of the day, there needs to be somebody who's ultimately responsible for and making the final decision. I don't love the idea that it seems that they're going with this collaborative approach because I don't think it really works. I think that you need somebody who's leading the charge and says, this is our vision. We need to figure out a way to execute it. But that person has essentially ultimate veto power. Similar to again, same draft class, right? John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were in the draft room. Shanahan wanted Mac, and Lynch was like, no, everything we've seen, points to Trey Lance. I mean, obviously they made the wrong decision. I mean, how wrong, we don't really know. How things would have worked out if they had taken Mac over Lance. Who knows, right? Lance didn't work out, but whatever. So I don't love the conservative approach to how they're treating the front office. Kraft has kind of been building a reputation that he doesn't take risks, right? He had the same coach for 24 years. Not to say that Bill deserved to be fired at any point during that 24-year run, but he had the same head coach for 24 years, and there was a changing of personnel. You went through Pioli and Cesario and Ziegler and Wolf and all these other guys, right, who were player personnel guys under Bill. But I think that you're seeing it where Kraft essentially handed the reins to a familiar face within the organization. Gerard Mayo played here. He was been coaching here for 4 years prior to now being named the head coach. And he doesn't, at least to this point, has indicated that he's not going to hire anybody outside the organization to be the next general manager. So I'm not in love with the process, which is kind of clouding my thought process on what my expectations are. Because I think as a fan, as a lifelong fan, my expectations are that you have to aggressively address the quarterback position, however you deem it fit, whether you want to go sign a veteran or, you identify a guy and you say, hey, like, we think that Caleb Williams, or we think that Drake May, or we think that Jaden Daniels, fill in the blank. We think one of these guys is the next guy who's going to lead us into the future. He's going to be a franchise quarterback for the next, 12 to 15 years for us, to go get that guy. They need to aggressively upgrade at quarterback. They need help on the outside at wide receiver. Like, my expectations were that they were aggressively going to overhaul the offense. And the more that this unfolds, where they're keeping the status quo in the front office, where it's Groh and Wolf running the show, I don't love the decisions they've made draft-wise. Some good, some bad, right? But don't love it. Don't hate it. Don't love it. So I don't really have an expectation. other than, like until they do, like I'm at a point where until they do something different, because to this point, nothing they've done indicates that they're actually making drastic changes, right? They hired a head coach within the organization. They're keeping things in-house in the front office. They're not bringing in anybody from the outside to hold a significant front office or coaching role. So my concern is that my expectations are falling into this idea of, well, nothing's actually going to change. It's just, there's a new head coach on the sidelines, and the approach to the draft and free agency is going to remain the same because you're keeping the same people. So my expectations right now are kind of tampered because I really don't know what to expect. And I'm kind of falling, again, I'm falling towards the, like, I'm not expecting anything to change, which is unfortunate. But I'm at a point where until they actually do something that indicates, like, yeah, they're actually going to make meaningful change, and we can get excited about a possible draft day trade up or pre-draft trade up, from number 3 somewhere else because they no, we need a quarterback, we're getting this guy. Until they do something like that, my expectation is I don't think anything's going to change other than what faces are behind what's next.
Fair. JR, where are you at?
I have faith. I have faith in Groh, and I have faith in Elliott Wolf and the scouting team and just the front office as a whole. I do think that Bill Belichick did handcuff and kind of hold them back from doing what they wanted to do. The article that comes out about, how he went with the N'Keal Harry pick over A.J. Brown or Deebo Samuel because of the reports of them laughing, having a fun time on their visit to Gillette. And I just think he was past his prime as a general manager with scouting offensive talent, and I do believe they were hamstrung by him. So I would like to see them get an actual chance to run a draft and a run a free agency on their own without his say and actually go for top-end playmakers. Because if they end up doing that, the result was they were trying, but they were just getting shut down. But if it's business as usual, it's like, okay, maybe it wasn't the right decision to keep them, but I do have faith in Groh. He's a smart guy. He's been around the game a long time. Same as Elliott Wolf. His dad was an executive, smart man. He was on the Packers organization for a long time. He was around the Browns for a while before he came here. So give him a shot. And if it doesn't work out with him, but you got to give him a shot at least once.
I mean, I guess I look at it and say, if there's somebody who learned, under a John Lynch or I don't know.
Well, he's in Washington now, so the guy that you're talking about.
Yeah, I know that Adam Peters got hired by the Commanders, but I'm saying, where's the harm? Even if your plan is that you have it in your back pocket, like, hey, we're probably going to keep this in-house, but where's the harm of bringing in an external candidate to at least offer an external perspective that isn't part of what you've done for the last 5 years? Even if
I don't think they're not going to do that. I still think they're going to bring somebody in from all the reports that they're trying to bring somebody in.
You see, I don't, because if they were really going to bring in an external candidate, they would have sent out requests already. If they haven't sent out, everyone's putting out requests to interview the next GM, anybody who has an opening at head coach, whatever, right? I know we're talking about GM. Anybody who has a GM opening is sending out requests being like, hey, we want to interview this guy for a GM job. The Patriots haven't done that. And if they have, there's been zero report that the Patriots have contacted another team to say, hey, we want to interview so-and-so for our vacant general manager position, which to me says that Kraft is not interested in bringing in an external candidate for the job, that it's going to remain in-house with Groh and Wolf, and there will not be external interviews because they're not going to name a GM. Because if you don't name a GM, you don't have to go through the interview process. You can say, well, right now we have a vacant GM position. We're not filling it right now. We're just going to go with our director of player personnel and our head of scouting.
Also remember, a lot of these front office changes happen after the draft because scouts and these people's contracts last until after the draft, and then that's when contracts are up for renewal.
I'd be willing to bet you that no team is not hiring a GM until after the draft.
I'm just saying you know how the Patriots work. We've seen this over the last 24 years.
Well, the Patriots haven't needed to hire a GM.
Exactly.
But think
this
about
is
that.
new territory.
But think about that logically. Why would you not hire a GM until after free agency and after the draft is over? At that point, don't hire a GM because you've already made the vast majority of your player personnel decisions. You're basically bringing somebody in to say, okay, I don't love this roster, so I'm going to make trades, or I love this roster, we'll figure it out. Like the timing of that doesn't make sense. Like I can understand if you wanted to bring in a GM like after the Super Bowl or maybe at some point like during free agency, but it doesn't make any sense why you would not hire a GM until after the draft when that's when you need a GM for the draft and free agency.
I have faith in Matt Groh and Elliot Wolf. I have faith in them.
Based on what though? What have they done over the last unless you fully believe that Bill Belichick was undermining their belief system?
I fully believe that.
So you think that Bill's been undermining Groh and Wolf for the last 5 years?
Look at the last draft. Look at this last draft. We didn't get an offensive player until the 4th round.
Okay,
and for the
last 4 years, it's been a collaborative approach to the draft.
It has been a approach, but who has the final say come draft time when they're on the clock? Bill Belichick.
I mean, sure, yes, it's Bill, but like.
Nicole, disconnect your phone from the Wi-Fi, please. Connection up here.
We'll have to edit out. We'll have to edit that.
Ms. Future Couture is getting the earful.
We'll have to edit that out of the podcast. Here's where I'm at. I have no problem giving Groh and Wolf a shot. I really don't. I have no problem doing that at all. They 100% deserve the shot. I mean, obviously they've made, the Patriots haven't been that great over the last 4 years, but I think that, I do trust Kraft. I do trust Kraft's judgment. Sorry, that was a little bit of a tongue twister there. I trust his judgment, but big picture, I just don't see what the harm would be in. I mean, granted, I know the timing was off because I think Adam Peters was hired. Was it the day of Bill Belichick being announced that he wasn't going to return?
Like literally just like an hour after Bill Belichick got fired.
Like so the timing is off, right? But as soon as they knew that Bill was gone, I would have expected that if they really wanted to, like, what's the harm in that timing? What's the harm in at least bringing somebody in for an interview?
Well, he's been the only front office hire in the league so far.
No, I mean, yeah, there's obviously time, but they're not not sending out requests, which is concerning to me.
A lot of other teams haven't either. Alec Hallaby interviewed with.
But what teams currently don't have a GM that haven't sent out a request that are in need of a general manager? As far as I know,
the Commanders anymore. The Panthers
have not sent out a single request for a GM.
I don't believe so.
Unless they're interviewing, because isn't their assistant GM a guy that's been getting requested for GM jobs? I can't think of his name, but I think the Panthers assistant GM is possibly up for a job.
Scott
Dan Morgan is the assistant GM, so that's not a name I've seen. But anyway, unless they're looking to promote from within, I don't know. Obviously, like, time will tell. Like I said, we've got 2 months until the new league year starts. We have, I think, 6 weeks until the combine. So obviously there's time for them to figure out their general manager situation. Well, I should say their front office situation. But I'm just concerned that they're perfectly fine with, like, they don't have an interest in any external candidates, and I just don't see the harm in bringing in. I just don't see the harm in why you don't at least bring somebody in. Like, that's the weird thing. Like, if you're fine with Groh and Wolf, like, I just don't see why you don't at least say, like, hey, like, why don't you come interview? We'll see what happens. Even if in the back of your head you're like, we'll probably go with Wolf and Groh. That's what I'm saying. But yes, they do. You're correct. I absolutely am willing to give them a shot.
I think the big thing
bringing Trey Brown though
for them. You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
finally.
We'll have to edit your spousal dispute out of the podcast.
Yeah.
I tease.
You could hear me?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
like
Nicole can disconnect your
you're-
phone from the Wi-Fi.
you're like internet sucks up here.
No connection up here.
It was a worthy chuckle.
Yeah, my fucking Wi-Fi has been terrible today.
She's sitting on her phone watching TikTok.
But anyways, I thought I muted myself.
No, you didn't.
Actually, it said I disconnected.
Oh
Don
yeah.
Lauren.
So the big picture of what I was bringing up, I think originally was, a week ago, and you guys explained it kind of well, the decision to, not bring someone in, should they have, all that. I think the big thing is their Wolf and Grow are going to be on a mission to kind of right their reputation and show that it wasn't them. And so I don't know, we'll see, obviously. It's tough to predict how they'll approach things, but I think they'll be pretty damn aggressive in adding offensive talent because they want to show it was not them that was deciding, not to draft a wide receiver or to draft Tyquan Thornton instead of, say, George Pickens, or, to not sign that X wide receiver, which, could have been like DeAndre Hopkins. I think they'll be pretty strong in that concept. So I'm excited. I think I'm leaning more towards like JR's view is I'm optimistic of how they're going to approach this offseason. I think that they could be. I mean, they have all the assets in the world to add. Basically,
well, if they want to make a
everything they need
splash
to
day
add.
one of free agency on a receiver, it's already a
They have
success.
the number.
T. Higgins, come to Boston.
Who?
T. Higgins.
I'd take Michael Pittman Jr. too.
Who'd you
So
say?
we'll see.
Michael
Obviously,
Pittman
who's
Jr.
even available.
I didn't think. I didn't
available
realize.
for them.
I didn't
and,
think Pittman was a free agent.
Yep.
But he is. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Matt.
because he was a second-round pick. I think.
Yeah, but
right?
I didn't think he'd been in the league for 4 years already.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Honestly, it feels like it's been longer.
Oh, see, I feel like he's
feel
only
like
been in the
he's
league. I feel like he's only been in the league for like 2 or 3 years.
He was taken in the same draft that Jalen Hurts was taken in.
Well, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways. So we'll see. He's actually available at wide receiver, but I could see them. I could see them throwing money at Mike Evans on like a 2-year deal to get him here if they draft a young QB, to give him that go-to guy for a couple years.
Well, you can get T.
I
Higgins
could
for 4 years, and he can be that go-to guy for 4 years.
Well, if you have to then trade the 34th pick, 35th pick to get him,
If they tag him,
they're going to tag him. They're not letting T. Higgins walk for.
give him next
basically
year's
nothing.
second. Fuck it.
Well, Higgins also
I
wants
could
to
see-
stay in Cincinnati anyway.
But
I don't-
Jamar wants the money up front.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be able to pay Higgins, but
Yeah.
I can see them going after
and-
someone like Mike Evans just because they want to put a veteran around the young guy, and that makes a lot of sense. I could see like.
Well, you can't
Tyler
assume
Boyd.
it's around the young guy because free agency is 6 weeks before the draft. So
Here's
you'd be signing Mike Evans, hoping that you draft a young quarterback to have Mike Evans. It wouldn't
Here's
be
my
the other
thing.
way
I
around.
guess in theory, but like you have the number 3 pick. If you love Jaden Daniels, you're guaranteeing him.
Well,
Or
yeah.
if you love Drake May and Jaden Daniels, you're basically guaranteed one of them.
Correct.
Here's my thing. This is what I was thinking of earlier today. Say they sign Mike Evans, and you don't get Bourne back. You trade Parker, and then you cut Juju.
Speaking of Bourne just posted on Twitter and said, like, if you buy my merch, I'm coming back to Patriots fans.
Matt, go spend $1,000.
If you wait, what did you say? If you do what, I'll be back.
He like just randomly posted. I'll pull it up. and it's a link to his shop, and it says,
Born
"Pats
blessed.
fans, if y'all order some merch, I'm coming back."
Oh, all
with
right.
eye emojis.
Matt,
So I
go
don't know
drop
what that means.
$1,000.
So real quick, just because you guys brought up Mike Evans. Mike Evans is what? 31, 32. So given the cost of talent. Now Mike Evans is
He's 30, by the way. He'll be 30.
He's
He'll be
30?
31 right.
Okay.
Holy
31
shit, I thought he was 32.
No, he's been in the league for 10
31
years.
at the end of August.
So he'll be 31. Okay, he's been in the league 10 years, so I figured he was 31-ish. So, and the reason I know it's 10 years is because Mike Evans is the first wide receiver in the history of the league to have 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons to start a career. He's never not had a 1,000-yard season. So we all know how much Matt loves Spotrac.com. The current market value contract, according to Spotrac on Mike Evans, is $24 million a season. And their projected contract, well, it's just under, it's 23.8. So based on their projection, they say that his market value contract for this year is 4 years and just over $95 million. Are you giving that kind of money to Mike Evans?
He's not getting that.
I'd say 2 years I'd say 3 years, but like an opt-out after 2 years.
So you're getting Mike Evans for ages 31 to 34, and you don't think he's going to get $23 million for a guy who's never not had a 1,000-yard season?
He might get 23. He's not getting 4 years at 23.
At 30 years old, I think you're insane.
He could get that. There's teams that'll pay that.
I think he could get 3 years, like
$70 million.
I think 3 years, $70 million in play.
Like your Kirk, 2 years, $90 million.
80, 280. Yeah, I think 370 is in play. I would highly consider giving him that. He's just good. He's just good. He's consistent. He's been, he plays banged up quite often.
He plays hurt a lot, and he still has great games.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So he's out there. He would be like the definition of a good, reliable target for a young QB to have. And so, I would definitely be open to something like that. There are lower options too. I think Tyler Boyd's a decent option that they could go after. Curtis Samuel.
No, thanks.
Well, my thing was going to be, why don't they sign Mike Evans and Curtis Samuel? If you're going to trade Parker, and if you don't get Bourne back, and if you have to cut Juju.
So part of it is, Parker and Juju, they both basically I think they lose money in cap space if they cut both of them.
Not before June or after June 1st, no?
Yeah, they do.
It'll be less. It'll be like $2 million.
They can spread it out. They could spread out the dead cap, but I don't think they really save. I was looking at it the other day. I don't think they really save anything on either of them.
So I have it right here. So so I'll bring up Juju first. So if they cut Juju after June 1st, they eat $9.6 million this year and $2.6 million in 2025. Their best bet is to trade him after June 1st because they only have, and I say only, right? We're talking millions of dollars here. They would eat $2.6 million for the next 2 seasons, but in 2024 they saved $7.6 million on the cap because they're trading his contract,
instead of cutting him
outright. If we look at who you hold on, Devontae.
Which maybe you can get a team, you can pay a team to take his salary, but
so he
would be very difficult to trade.
Yeah, and on that, if you cut him before June 1st, you're eating $12 million this year, not $9 million this year and $2 million next year.
So they would lose $2 million.
Devontae Parker. So Devontae Parker, if they cut him after June 1st, they eat 4.7 this year and 1.5 next year. If they trade him, so realistically, if you're getting rid of either guy, you have to trade either one of them after with a post June 1st designation, and maybe you have to eat some of the money. My guess is wide receiver wise, you probably will have Parker and Juju on the team next year, because I don't think they're going to want to eat the money that they'd end up eating if they moved either one of those guys. I don't think that they're going to bring back Kendrick Bourne, because I think Pop Douglas kind of has that role if they're going to use him. So I think that your top 3 wide receivers going into your decisions for free agency in the draft are going to be Parker, Juju, and Douglas. I mean, obviously Booty, right? He's on a rookie deal. Why would you not keep him around?
I think realistically, if they add the players that they do want to add, I don't think that they'll be afraid to just get rid of Juju and or Parker just to get him off the roster. Like I could really see them if they went and added like a Mike Evans, and then they went and got a Walker from like Walker from UNC or Keon Coleman from FSU. I said that obviously
you're not getting Keon Coleman. Just
you gotta trade up.
Yeah, you'd have to take your quarterback early, and then you'd have to trade probably
the top 20, top 15.
You'd have to trade into the middle of the first round and take Keon Coleman.
Anyways.
And given where you're trading from, you'd have that's a lot of draft capital just for Keon Coleman.
I love Keon, but I would take
you
Brian
get what
Thomas.
I'm saying. Anyways.
If
they went and added Mike Evans and let's say Walker from UNC, who I think will probably be there at the top of the second. It's early, obviously things could change. But if they went and added 2 premier guys that you want playing early on, and then Douglas is there, and even if they brought back Kendrick Bourne, I could very much see them just saying, you know what? We have a bunch of cap space, screw it, we'll eat it this year just to get them off the roster and kind of start a new era at that position.
They just need to invest in the offense completely this offseason.
Yeah, and hell, if we're being real, if Belichick goes and takes a new job, for a new team, a new team, if you're Parker or Juju, their contract's going to be small.
Yeah,
in terms
just
of bringing them in.
Give that team to Belichick, guys.
Yeah, if Belichick would want them, you could take 1 or 2 of them. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Ooh.
Give him a mid-round pick as a sweetener.
I mean, really, I could you just give him a 6th and Parker for a 7th.
I'd do that in a heartbeat.
You know what I mean? Just
literally
just give pay him them a little extra just to take them, and you save a little bit of extra money. Obviously, that's a whole nother topic, big picture, but I could see them moving on from one or both of them pretty quickly. If they add other pieces. And I don't think that having them on the roster will make them say no, we don't need to add. We have these guys.
We need to add badly.
Need to add.
Like I said, they're going to be. I really do think that Mayo, Kraft, and especially Elliott Wolf and Matt Groh are going to be very, very, very eager to show what they have to offer. Obviously, you're following in the footsteps of Bill Belichick, which is difficult enough.
You're the guy replacing the guy.
They want to show that they belong.
Tough spot to be
in. And so I don't think that they can be flat-footed in this. I don't think that they can be, not go. I don't think that they can go at it in a quiet approach. They have to be aggressive. And that's, I don't want them to just throw money to throw money. Obviously, they need to be logical with it. But like I said, if Mike Evans is there, if you're all right, we're taking either Drake May or Jayden Daniels. We love both guys. Go give Mike Evans 3 years, $70 million. Get him here. Get him in the door. Then you go into the draft. Let's say you re-sign Bourne and you sign Mike Evans. You go into the draft knowing at minimum you have Evans, Douglas, and Bourne.
That's a pretty good 1-2-3.
Yeah, just like if you we saw what Bourne could be this year. If you assume Douglas takes a little bit of a step as a player, at minimum that's a significantly better receiving core.
Just cut bait
Never
with
mind
Tyquan.
and never mind the fact that like you could now also add in the draft and add another piece. They just need to be aggressive. Obviously, free agent happens first, so it's going to be a little bit interesting to see what they prioritize. But I think logically they're going to fill. I think logically they'll fill like tackle or wide receiver in some degree in free agency first.
That's
so hopefully they can.
That's my preference. Is I want to spend on the line in free agency because I want a top quarterback and a top wide receiver with the first 2 draft picks.
Yeah, and I haven't looked too much into the tackle free agency spot. I don't know exactly who's there, but big picture, that's I mean they can spend on one of them and prioritize it, and if they could get like a tackle that they feel comfortable with at left tackle, then fuck it, they can take a 3rd or 4th round tackle and see if they can develop.
Yeah,
maybe,
well, and don't forget that they have to worry about Onwenu. They have to sign him and somebody on the left side.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll get into as we get closer to free agency. We'll get into all kind of our own guys and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, they have all the money they have more than enough money to like re-sign all their guys and add multiple big pieces in free agency. I know one thing that kind of drove me nuts is I proposed the question to you guys, and I proposed it online of if you would trade a big package to move up to 1. And everyone kept saying, like, we're so far away, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I get it. That far away, like trading, it was what? It was 2 firsts. It was 3 a first next year, 4th and a 2nd, where you could trade up for Caleb Mayo. Caleb
Williams.
Caleb Williams.
I didn't realize that we blended the 2 together.
Still have all your picks this year in the mock that I gave, so you could still add talent in all the other spots, and then not only you have a ton of money, but you would know that Caleb Williams is going to be dirt cheap for the next 4 years. What's to stop them from adding Mike Evans and spending on a left tackle and spending big in free agency? They could fill essentially all the 3 or 4 biggest needs pretty quickly. I don't see how, like, realistically they couldn't be a 7, 8, 9 win team next year just based off that, like, minimum.
You know what?
So, like,
give Fields another weapon. Give him Devontae Parker too. Why not?
Who?
Give Fields another weapon in that trade. Give him Devontae Parker.
Yeah. He can have Devontae Parker. Him and Marvin Harrison Jr. can battle for the wide receiver 2 spot in Chicago. But no, you guys get what I'm saying. Like,
I just want to see it actually unfold. I mean, obviously, I'm comparing apples to oranges here, but we said the same thing with the Red Sox after they let Bloom go and hired a new GM or new chief baseball officer, that we, based on everything they were saying, we expected things to be different, and it's literally the status quo. So,
well, it's Robert Kraft versus John Henry.
And I understand, but we still don't know who actually was the one not spending money. And we'll find that out sooner rather than later, because there's a new regime in Foxborough. So we'll know right away, was it Bill not wanting to spend, or was Kraft telling Bill that he couldn't actually spend? And then when the illusion was he could, but Kraft was the one telling him he couldn't, we'll find that out sooner rather than later. And again, we're talking 2 different sports, 2 different teams, 2 different ownership groups, right? But like, I just don't want to get my hopes up like we all did when the Red Sox finally moved on from Bloom, and we were like, well, Bloom's the problem. He's not spending the money.
I was not like that.
And he's not. You were a little bit, just not to the level that JR and I were. We all thought that, that spending that once, and maybe not necessarily on the Bloom side, but on the Breslow side, that, when Sam Kennedy, talked about the plan was, we're going to go full throttle and we're going to spend more with Breslow. And we're finding out that was literally a lie, that they're not doing that at all, because here we are, pitchers and catchers report in 2.5 weeks, and they've made 2 signings and spent $39 million on 2 guys when they have
Your
massive
number one
holes.
signing was Lucas Giolito.
And right. So again, I digress, but you come back to the New England Patriots, and we'll find out pretty soon if it was Bill's decision to not spend money, or if Kraft was saying like, hey, you can't spend my money the way that the public thinks you can. Because obviously T Higgins is the prize in the offseason if he's in fact there. You've got other options that we've talked about. So if they go out and actually spend aggressively. Now they've spent in the past. Well, how many years ago did they have the free agent spending when it was
2 years
Judon?
ago.
That was the same year they drafted Jones, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they did that, but they, if they do that again, it's like, okay, well, are they actually spending aggressively, or are they just doing what they've always done? Because they've never spent aggressively on a wide receiver. They've never spent aggressively on offensive line, and they've never, and maybe aggressive is not the right word here, but they've never
gone to market.
They've never actually and not that they've needed to for a long time, but since Brady, they've never really gone after a quarterback.
They have to now. It's a new era.
Right, but you have to now. But and again, it's more of, we're kind of in unknown territory here, because we've never had to do the things that other teams have done and had success with. In back-to-back years, the Bengals draft Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, and within 2 years of making both of those moves, they're minutes away from winning a title. So, but we haven't needed to do that because we've had Tom Brady for 20 years. But I think that we're all just hopeful that, that they'll figure out a way to do those things. It's just, we haven't needed to. So for me, I kind of throw my hands in the air because I don't know if we'll actually do it, because there's no precedent, but we just don't know. We'll just have to wait and see if Kraft's actually willing to say, whoever the guy is, whether it's Groh or Wolf, and say, hey, here's money, go out and actually go get targets for, for a guy, and then figure out who you want for quarterback and go up and make that move.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously all wait and see at this point. So we'll see how they approach it all. Like I said, I just think that they have to be aggressive, and for so many personal reasons, that they all have this thing that they want to show. I feel like especially Groh and Elliott Wolf, I think that they want to be able to flex what they view and how they want to build a team. And we'll see who has the final say, and if those viewpoints align and all that. That's a whole a wormhole of what we could discuss. But I think that they big time want to show that they can do this, and not even so much about just showing that it was all Bill Belichick, just showing that they can build a team, and that starts with adding significant pieces to the offense, and we'll see soon enough what options will be available. And then, I mean, we're about 2 months from the start of the league year next year.
Just under March 11th is the first day of the legal tampering.
My birthday.
Yep. So
the 13th is when players can actually sign their deals, but legal tampering starts March 11th.
Well, hopefully for my birthday we sign T. Higgins.
Yeah, hey,
I will fucking hate my life.
So we all know that Matt Groh and Elliott Wolf are dialed into the episodes that we put out week to week. So get co-host JR a birthday present and go sign T. Higgins away from Cincinnati.
Give me T. Higgins and give me another wide receiver.
You hear that? Okay. You hear that? All right. So we're gonna wrap it up there. We're about at the
90-minute mark already.
At the point, I wanted to get into a little bit of Red Sox, but there's not really much. It's more so just ownership sucking as usual.
And throwing Craig Breslow under the bus already.
Yeah, that was awesome. throwing Breslow under the
We'll
bus.
leave it at there. Boys, any final thoughts?
Go Pats, it's a new era. Go Mayo.
Yeah, excited for the future, and I want to actually see a change in
Philosophy.
approach, philosophy. Well, I mean, the philosophy I think should be the same. It's about winning. I just want to change how they just define how they want to build the team to actually win.
Yeah, I mean, we'll hear a little bit tomorrow. Mayo's press conference is at noon. So I'm sure he'll have a little bit of insight. It's going to be hella weird, boys. Going forward, we're going to have a head coach that actually might give some info.
What are the odds he wears a hoodie to the press conference?
He wears like quarter zips on the sideline, so
he'll show up wearing
showed up.
He'll show up wearing a sweater
that,
vest.
2000 and his Belichick's 2008 hoodie that's torn
the
up.
gray Reebok one.
That the dude's been wearing for 2 decades. That was probably stuffed under his desk for the last 10 years. I would fucking love it.
Mike Dussault was wearing it on PJ's Unfiltered the other day.
Conference. And Mayo just shows up in this raggedy old Bill Belichick hoodie.
He's got to have the messed up hair too, like that photo of Bill. He's
they should have a name tag on the desk that says Gerard Belichick. that would really troll the media. But
Bill
all right,
Mayo.
We'll leave it there. We'll be back next week, and hopefully, nothing happened for the Red Sox or really the MLB over the last week. So hopefully something happens there, and maybe we have a right-handed bat, or maybe we have a starting pitcher,
or both.
But either way, we'll be here to cover it. And thank you.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
Save the earth, vote for Dearth.
Save the earth, vote for Dearth. Hashtag.
Yikes.
Peace.
Night, guys.
Tag us in it. We'll send you a prize. Peace.
Ben Dearth.